However, the record will be only for the presentation itself and the voice and the guiding from us. Let me introduce David Tinker. David is the development director of ProReal, and we'll start to give you the brief about the idea and concept about ProReal, and later Andrew Jackson, which is the chief executive of the ProReal, will tell you more about the research and findings and ProReal applications. So David, over to you.
Thanks very much, Mikhail, and good morning to everybody from a very sunny Avon Canal here in the UK. Do you want to go to our first slide then, Mikhail? So that's a bit of our agenda today. I'm going to do the brief potted history of ProReal, kind of where it's come from, and then go through a demonstration to talk you through the software. And then I'll be handing over to Andrew, who's going to talk through the research and evidence. And then we'll have a look at potential applications in whatever roles that you come from, and however you might be interested in working with ProReal. A little bit about where it's come from. I've been an executive coach for more years than I care to think, and I remember doing some work with a client when they wanted to share screens and share models, and that then dropped me into Second Life. And in Second Life, when I had a look at what avatars and technology could do, and compared that with some work in constellations, or some of you may be familiar with psychodrama or associated drama, so working with systems. At the time, clean language was just appearing, and a great impact on certainly the coaching community, and I guess storytelling, mask work, puppetry, or shadow work's been around for generations. So the brief for ProReal was to help. It should help express thoughts and feelings. It would take storytelling features. So this is taking all the values or some of the key elements of storytelling that's been around for generations, and use metaphor and symbol to create these visual interpretations of what we might think and how we might feel, and that we could get systems in action. It was really important that we could use cameras to take different perspectives, so we could stand back, and I guess some of that's come from working with many groups and individuals, and being able to take different positions in seeing a situation or oneself and one's role. The remote working, if you think about most people's digitalization or digital journey, we're now so used to doing this, which is working remotely. We needed or the design brief for ProReal needed us to be able to be in different countries, in different places, and share or be immersed in the same world. And that it should be secure for all sorts of ethical and good reasons. We had to make sure that the architecture behind the design of ProReal has meant that we are safe and secure in its use. Okay, so now for the demonstration. I'll give you a bit of a landscape tour.
So I stop sharing my screen now, David, so you can start here. I can see your screen.
Okay, so here we are. I've put a few of us in here. And we're in a wood, and in some ways a dark wood, but we started in this clearing. And the design of ProReal and the landscape, as I said, was taken from storytelling, and quite often there's a dark wood, and in the same way as sometimes we might feel in our lives we're in a bit of a dark wood and we can't see out very far, but somehow or another there'll be a route out if I could find it through these woods. And as we get to the edge of this gateway, sometimes coming out of the dark woods, which could be, I can't see the horizon, and I guess for anybody that might have been in a troubled time in their lives, it might feel like they've been in a dark wood. And as you can now see, we come out into the open. And there's the woods behind us. In the landscape, there's pathways. And over here, you can see on the left, there's a crossroads. And most people have probably been at a crossroads in their lives at some stage. There's a castle. And the castle, for some people, could be home. It could be, for those who are working, it could be head office. It could be a prison. It could be a place they don't particularly want to get out of. It could be a number of things. We have water that runs through our landscape. I guess water in storytelling terms has always been something to do with emotion or an energy running through it. We've got a ravine here, and the ravine has an edge to it. So sometimes if you feel like your life's on a bit of an edge, you might position yourself by the ravine. So we've got a landscape that's a storytelling landscape, and it tends to have enough features in it for someone to say, well, if this were in my life, I'd be in that place. I'd be in the woods, or I'd be on the edge of the ravine, or I'm at a crossroads. And I'm just going to start. I just had an idea for someone this morning we might work with to help with the rest of the demonstration. First of all, before I carry on, can I just check that the speed's working okay, given the internet connection? We doing all right?
We're doing very good, I think, David.
All right, good. Okay, so I've just brought in an avatar, and I'm going to call him Simon. So what we're going to go through now is a process of bringing Simon to life. And by that, I'm going to give Simon a color. So when I think of Simon, he's going to be green. I can give him a size here, and the size depends on confidence or level of authority. And first of all, I'm going to give Simon a posture. He's feeling a bit sad or closed, and he is behind this rock, and I purposefully put him there. And he's saying, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. He's not very happy. So that's our Simon. So what I'd like to ask, so if this were a scene, and might be one familiar, and maybe you might know Simon in some way or another, who else would be around in Simon's life? So what's going on that Simon feels scared and he doesn't know what to do, and he's put himself behind this rock? Any thoughts? And I'd welcome something on chat, or if you've got your voice on or whatever. So who's another character that might be in Simon's life? I can't see chat.
Simon's partner.
Simon's partner. What's her name or his name?
Susan.
Okay, what color's Susan?
Blue.
Bigger or smaller than Simon?
About the same.
About the same, okay. And what's Susan saying? Anyone? What might Susan be saying? I'm the breadwinner. My job matters most. A little bit of that going on for Susan. And let's add a a posture. We can choose a number of postures. Actually, let's be bold here. Let's have a rather angry Susan that's going on. So here we have
There is an
Simon.
idea to have Simon Boss here as well.
Simon's boss. Okay. Whereabouts is Simon's boss? I'm going to call him Simon's boss. Colour. Ooh, booze.
And Boss is saying you need to be more effective.
Ooh.
Color red of Simon Boss.
Thank you. Size. Sounds like bigger.
Big size.
And posture. We've got one here that would be
Angry posture. There is a recommendation for angry.
angry. I can understand where what poor Simon's up to. Okay. Anyone else around, or who else might be there? If nothing comes to mind. So otherwise we've got Simon in the middle of quite an angry wife on one side, an angry boss, and we've got Simon
And
going,
Simon
I'm scared.
friend. And Simon friend, perhaps.
Simon's friend. Friend of Simon. Simon's friend, okay.
Gray
Okay.
color.
How far away? Whereabouts?
Quite close.
Quite close, all right. So we got Simon's friend. Saying what? Yeah,
I can help you. Saying I can help you.
I can help. I had a thought of
with the open posture.
or open. Okay. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're doing a lot of labeling. So we're labeling various characters, we're giving them a voice, and we're giving them a position. So we're setting out a system, we're adding emotions. And if I were Simon doing this, I'm understanding how others are feeling as well. And something we can do for Simon is add some inner voices. So what's something Simon might be saying to himself? Any thoughts?
I'm tired. You are tired.
You're tired. So there's something about that's a care, isn't it? That sounds like that's taking care of Simon.
Yeah.
So here we have an inner voice for Simon, and we can add up to 4 inner voices along the bottom here. So that there could be another one that was saying, you deserve this. It's your life, etc. That could be kind of critic. So as part of what's going on internally, he's attracting externally as well. So there's some sense of stuckness potentially for him. But we've got these inner voices that appear, as you can see, just behind Simon's head. So if we go to view from one of the other avatars, You can see those heads just behind Simon's head. So those are his inner voices. And what we can do with the views is view from any of these avatars that we've created, so we can step into their shoes, as well as step back and view from the roaming camera. And something else we can do is add some props or symbols. So we got a number of props or symbols here: the elephant in the room, the gravestone, the milestone, minefield. Any thoughts on which one of these you might add? Or if I put it easier, if I added a minefield, what might that be for Simon? Any thoughts? So it might be for him that's
current situation about my career, current career.
Yeah. Yeah. Might also be saying no. Could be a number of things for Simon, and he's looking quite trapped there. So these props we can add, and whether it's a label or whether it's the elephant there in clocks, all of these help us label a story and tell the story for Simon. So we've got a landscape here that helps us tell the story because it's Simon in his behind the rock. What we've done is added avatars, and the avatars bring out of the system. We've done some labeling, we've added thoughts and feelings, and we've added symbols to help tell the story. And in doing that also, we've taken views from each of the avatars to build different perspectives and therefore insight, or we've worked with a roaming view where we step right back. Okay. So that's the software in essence, and that's what we do. So now what I'd like to do is hand over to Andrew to talk about some of the things we've been doing with it. And in fact, are there any questions before I move on? Any questions about that? Okay, let's move. Can you go to Andrew?
Yeah, Andrew, over to you.
Yes, thank you, David. And hopefully you can both see me and see the material. Is that right, Mikhail? Have you got my video? Is that working okay?
Yeah, I can see you.
Great. Okay. Thank you. So yeah, I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk you through both the findings of the research that we've done and also the research that's still ongoing, and tell you the places we're working and some of the feedback, and I'll share some feedback and some real quotes from some of the people that have used the software. So what you can see in front of you is a prison. It's a Category B prison called Dovegate in Staffordshire in the UK, and it's where we first started our research journey back in September 2014. We conducted a pilot survey with offenders in a therapeutic community. And Mikhail, if I can show you the next slide, please, on that. Just the findings from that were really interesting, and this was our first experience of using the software with adults between 18 and 34 years of age. We found a reduction in psychological distress. We found positive improvements in well-being, specifically enhanced levels of self-expression, as David's just shown, being able to label and name and identify feelings particularly. The offenders and staff members got new insights from the process, and there was a development of empathy, both from offender to offender and also between offenders and staff, which was really interesting, and resulting in what was reported as stronger relationships, which we were very pleased to see and pleased to hear about. And as you can see there, the participants liked the intervention and the software. It was stable, it held up, and they rated it as good on a usability scale, so it was important that the offenders were able to use it without huge amounts of training, no need for big workshops to explain how to use it. The project was run jointly by Metanoia Institute and the University of Roehampton, and is published in a peer-reviewed journal, the British Journal of Guidance and Counselling. And if anybody wants a copy of that, I'm more than happy to share that after. A question on the chat was it one-to-one work? It was a bit of both, actually. It was both the group therapy work and one-to-one. And what was really interesting was the one-to-one work which the offenders helped each other with as part of that process. So and we trained one facilitator in the prison, one of the prison counsellors. So that was the model. They already had a therapeutic model. They already had a method of delivering therapy as part of their intervention, and we integrated to that, not the other way around. We just sort of built it into their process. Hopefully that answers your question. One quote, I'll just pull out some words. I think that was really interesting. It was a bit difficult because I always thought I was right, no matter if I was wrong. And now, after sitting down and putting it down on the computer, it makes me have a little bit more of empathy for them. Before I had none. I'm not saying that ProReal has brought the empathy out of me, but it made me look at it in a different way. Again, a real quote from a real offender talking about an experience of how ProReal and the conversation helped him see things and people in a different light, put themselves in their shoes. Okay. The next phase of work, phase 2 we call that, was a school counselling situation where we looked at, and this time a much larger sample. We used 54, we managed to have access to 54 young people, secondary school level between 11 and 18, across 8 different schools in the UK. And again, we integrated the software to their existing weekly counselling process, and the young people had between 4 and 10 sessions using ProReal across 8 different school counsellors who were mostly trained in something called humanistic person-centred counselling, which is the most common form of UK-based counselling, and quite experienced counsellors. These are average of 6-7 years experience. And again, over the page, I'll just share some of the results. This was a complex piece of work which required some of the leading charities. Place to Be, Action for Children, Oxford Health helped us set up and deliver the counselling and the intervention and the design. Also sponsored by NHS England, SBRI Healthcare, with the University of Roehampton this time leading the research. Professor Mick Cooper is one of the world's leading school counselling researchers, professor at the University of Roehampton, and strongly supported by the NIHR Mindtech team up in Nottingham around the design and the measures and the evaluation process that we followed. Over the page, I can just share some of the results from that, which were that the reductions in psychological distress from the intervention were significantly greater than would have been expected without the intervention. So Mick Cooper has got a wealth of evidence and material to know what happens with young people if you don't have any therapeutic intervention. And so our outcomes were better than that. Over the page was a really interesting finding, which was that the males showed greater change than females. So the boys and young men found this, it helped everybody, but the reported outcomes were better for the young males in the audience, with an effect size of 0.61. Overall, for new clients, the overall effect size was about 0.6. So we had a mixture of new clients and existing clients. Great question, Monica. Any ideas why that might be the case? We've got some thoughts as to why it might be, and certainly we did a number of qualitative interviews, and we talked to the counsellors about why the boys might have been helped more, if you like. One thing that they said is it's really hard to get boys into counselling and to get them to stay in it, and so we think that having a software tool that is engaging and fun and playful and perhaps within their existing experience, you know, many of the young people will use gaming or are familiar with gaming software, but that's actually a really engaging way for them to connect with a counselling process. For some boys it's more difficult to have a conversation with a grown-up adult that they don't know, who's maybe a stranger to the school. So yeah, those are the sorts of conversations. But it was interesting to say it wasn't not helpful for girls. It just seemed to be more helpful for boys. So yeah, so Mikhail, if you could maybe just run the video of this. We've got a short video, which I think is about 5 minutes long, of an interview with one of the school counsellors. So this is a real case that that she dealt with, and it just tells the story, really. Probably tells the story better than I can. So Mikhail, if you could run that.
Let me play the video now. So I will share my screen here with the video. The video is more than 5 minutes, but I will pause it after the 5 minutes in a few seconds.
So Rita, can you explain a bit about this scene and your client?
Well, my client was a young female who was deaf, and she came to counselling because she was really getting into loads of trouble at home and in school. She felt she was completely not heard, misunderstood, and she was very, very angry with the world. So if you look at the scene where she's on the left here, she's red and she's just raging with everything. And here in this other scene where she's grey, she felt very much, alone, misunderstood, and really at a crossroads in her life, didn't really know where she was going. Or when I first met Sarah, this was very much her. She felt really hidden from the world. She also had a bereavement which she couldn't talk to. She felt people didn't understand. So she could add different props to express her bereavement and her angry self. Felt because she was deaf, can I put it, she felt she couldn't really express her anger because because she couldn't hear, people also wouldn't hear her anger. She could, with ProReal, she could add a prop and show her anger and be her anger in a sense.
And what's going on with this one here, this grey one?
Yeah, it was almost like as if there was two parts of Sarah. There was the really angry Sarah, and then there was the part where she felt very much alone in herself, in her anger, in her world. Because she was deaf, she had to try and read people's expressions, and because that sometimes took up an awful lot of her time, she would sometimes have an expression on her face that looked really angry, but she may not necessarily be angry, it's just she had to concentrate, and again, really misunderstood. Well, for me, during our sessions, it was like a progression from the barren, angry, misunderstood Sarah, and to eventually, I look at Sarah as being really gutsy and brave because she managed to come out of this crossroads, and she became a lot calmer. She saw the different parts of herself and she could accept it, and she could also present them and talk about them. And for Sarah, that seemed really important, to be allowed to express these different parts and also accept them. I found weekly during our sessions, she was the one that, she took over the sessions, and she just presented, this was her colour she picked, and it represented for her calmness, and she's looking back. And she was very reflective. She just said, yeah, this is me here now. I've moved away from this barren sort of crossroads to this brighter, calmer place. Which ProReal, as a counsellor, I found a really useful tool, because you could actually go back and visually see where the client has moved forward. If we go on a little bit further, we can also see another part of Sarah. which is really close to the water, and she found that view really calming. And she said in between sessions she used that picture of the water when she was feeling particularly frustrated and angry. She still held this picture, so it brought her down to calmness really. And she wanted to name this Happy, and the color here it looks golden, but it was she described it as being a really bright sunset, or sorry, sunrise, really yellow sun. When she moved here near the water, she said she wanted people from becoming a really closed, lacking in confidence, didn't want to be seen, didn't want to be noticed, but all this angry. So she was really happy now, and she wanted people to look at her. She wanted people to see her, and I'm getting really excited about this. And also one of the words she said was, I belong. I may be deaf, but I actually belong in this world. And
I will
you know,
post the video now. It's just the
Thanks. Thank you, Mikhail. Great to hear the counsellor's words again after all that time. It brings back some memories for me of the project and the some of the wonderful stories that came out of that. It was great articulation from a counsellor. So as you can see there, Sarah having the ability to put the words into pictures, and the feelings and thoughts that she was particularly difficult to express being deaf. So it was great opportunity for her to say, and in her own words, or in the words of one of the students, actually this isn't Sarah's words, but another of the students, I thought it would be easier to express myself instead of just using words all the time. It gave it more opening to express myself a little bit better, and to help to understand what I was going through. And yes, your question, Monica, what are my memories? My memories were the really positive stories of change that we helped, and that the counsellors who'd initially expressed quite a bit of skepticism, as did some of the students, about this, how's this software going to help, found it a really helpful vehicle. I remember visiting several of the schools myself and talking to the counsellors, and they said how quickly the disclosure happens, how accelerated that disclosing process is. Perhaps what might have taken a few face-to-face conversations is suddenly accelerated. You heard Rita, the counsellor there, talking about how the young person just took over, did all the driving, and just got going. So it was just a really reassuring and helpful thing. We had no harmful effects. There was nobody who said they really didn't like the software. There were some that got more value from it than others. So that was also helpful to us. Okay, so just to move on from that, some of the other work that we're doing to pull that forward. Thanks, Mikhail. So we're doing several other pieces of research that are supported heavily by the NIHR Mindtech team in Nottingham. The first is borderline personality disorder. The Royal Bethlehem Royal Hospital is one of the oldest mental health establishments in the world, actually. It's part now of South London and Maud's the NHS Foundation Trust, and we're doing research there with their Touchstone team, which is part of the borderline personality intervention. They use a mentalization-based treatment, an MBT method, again, group therapy, and some one-to-one work, which we're just concluding that. We've had, I think, 15 or 16 people go through that now, and we're just getting the evaluation results, and we're very positive. We're very pleased to what we've heard so far, that has been very well received by the clinicians there. And the other study that's also being helped by that team in Nottingham is Oxford Health, one of the biggest child and adolescent mental health services in the country, where they're dealing with a whole range of people's mental health issues, mostly anxiety and depression, but other conditions as well, led by a wonderful guy, Paul Stallard, who has done a lot of work with technology in young people's mental health. So we're really pleased to have Paul engaged in that process. And those that have been trained and are already trained and participating and working with the software, just 3 examples there. The off-the-record youth counselling team in Bristol in southwest England. They have a drop-in centre where young people use the software with their trained counsellors. St Mary's is a part of the Manchester University Hospitals group up in the northwest of England. Again, looking at people with complex traumas as a result of sexual assault and rape crisis. That's one, it's a unit called a SARC. And also New Rays, which is a new foster home in the Midlands, where they're using ProReal to help people feel at home, to help them express how they're feeling, to help engage in the counselling and the caring process. So we're really excited about those organisations too who are getting going. Mikhail, if you can flip the page again. We work in corporates, and as perhaps some of you on the call already know, this was, and David mentioned, this was originally a piece of software that was designed for use in executive coaching and leadership development. And those are some of the businesses that we have or are using ProReal with. And what's very interesting over the page is some of the benefits that they've got, which I think are relevant to the health and social care world. They've found that it's an engaging tool. It's not a stigmatized approach to talking about thoughts and feelings or difficult situations. It does accelerate disclosure. It helps with relationships. Very much a self-awareness tool, as you could see there in the example in the school counselling, somebody setting out multiple versions of themselves and leading to new insights. We also believe, and the evidence suggests, that it's associated with lower levels of anxiety, of psychological distress. Great vehicle as well to catalyse in coaching some of the other psychological models that might be helpful. And of course, the real benefit that businesses are using it for is remote international coaching work, as well as homework or offline work, which means that for them it's a much reduced cost of delivering a coaching intervention. So the training path for ProReal is shown there. It's different training paths for different roles, typically taking around about between 15 and 20 hours of input needed from the facilitator, be that a coach, a counsellor, a consultant, or a coaching manager. And that culminates in an assessment process that we run against a competency model. And just to give some indication of pricing for the software and the training, it's £920 for our training, for our standard training course for coaches and counselling, and works out at around about £65 a month to access the software on a 12-month basis. So again, we'll be open to dialogue around licensing costs, but just to give you some indication of where that, how the pricing, the training, the licensing model works for us. Okay, I've been talking for long enough. Let's throw open to questions, either on chat or other, or any other observations. And maybe David, if you want to come back in at this stage.
The question, perhaps, how young people find the landscape with the castle, and are they familiar with those kind of landscapes, young people?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thank you, Mikhail. I think there's a really interesting idea of skepticism when people first see the software, and it is a little bit different. So it's quite common for us to say, for people to say, really, will this help? How will this help? What we've noticed in the young people's work and the work with adults, both in corporate and health and social care, is that actually it's a really good way of slowing the brain down and using labeling to express how they're feeling about things. We've been really interested in the use of metaphor. One of the clinical concerns in the Maudsley work was whether people with personality disorder are able to think metaphorically and represent things in metaphor. And so far we've found some initial findings that is the case, that they did like that, and they did understand and accommodate the use of metaphor in their work. So I think that's been a really interesting finding for us, that we found different levels of take-up in different settings, but generally people find it helpful to have different ways other than just talking. For some people, just talking about issues is quite difficult. David, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, I was going to say, I was just thinking as that question came in, I'm quite often asked about the ethics of using this software, what are additional ethical considerations we might have, and we do cover this in our academy. we know through research that levels of openness will be much higher. So it's called disinhibition in virtual worlds. And that means that it's really important in training that counselors or coaches, whoever uses it, understands this disinhibition and they contract really well. So it needs to be a very well-contained and safe environment for someone to work in. Other ethical considerations are around the fact that we treat each of these worlds as the client's property. So as if they've created a painting or a piece of art, they keep it, they know it, and we don't delete it. Actually, each of the worlds are saved so as we can go back to them with our clients, and the clients can, if need be, go back to them by themselves for self-reflective work. They are the property of the clients and they have control of them, over them. That's really important.
Yeah.
And I think other ethical considerations are around us ensuring that we have high levels of security, that their data can't be accessed by anybody else.
Yeah.
But those are some of the ethical considerations we have about use of the world.
Couple of questions that have just come in. I'll deal with each one separately. What's the biggest challenges that we faced here? One of the significant challenges we faced in both the prison and the school was the idea of the requirement for an internet connection for the software. We've re-architected the software so that you don't need an internet connection. It can be used entirely offline. And that's a significant improvement, we believe, because it means that we're not dependent on either Wi-Fi, which might fall over, and we can use it face-to-face very quickly. It can be used really simply on a range of devices. So I think IT was a challenge, but I think we're working through that while still trying to make sure that we've got secure and encrypted data. That's really important for the system design. And then I think the other one was, another question is, how does it work that it might be associated with a reduction in anxiety or a reduction in psychological distress? What are the mechanisms that are at play there? And we're keen to learn that, the answers to that. So we've commissioned some case study work where we're doing a detailed review. We've recorded the sessions, the counsellor interactions, we've recorded the screen and the way that the screen and the software was used, and we're looking into those mechanisms now. We've got two case studies. The first was with the 16-year-old boy who was diagnosed with autism, and we're looking really, and the researchers are looking at some of the mechanisms at play there. We're pretty confident that one of the key drivers in all therapy, and something that's not a surprise to us, I guess, is the ability to label a very complicated emotion, the ability to perhaps try and separate it out, understand it more, to gain new insights from that, is part of what the software does in its labeling process. So as David's demo showed there, it was quite easy to build empathy with Simon in his complex situation. And as one does that as the participant, as the client, then the mechanism of labeling, we think, is really key to this. David, I don't know whether you've got any other thoughts on either challenges or mechanisms from your perspective.
Yeah, I think some of the challenges for those that we've trained, whether the coaches or counsellors, is this challenge around what came out of clean language as being trialogue. So trialogue means that we're no longer working in the dialogue of the client and the practitioner together. We're including like a third party, which is the client's metaphor. And this does present, and it's not a natural thing for some people who are used to working in dialogue. Then we're working in trialogue, which is allowing that in and working with that. And that's quite often a challenge for all of us as practitioners. Yes. to let go of the dialogue and entertain and be open to the trialogue. But Mikhail and his team in the academy are now well practiced, well versed at understanding how to encourage practitioners into that new way of thinking.
In the same way as we're meeting online here and sharing and interacting digitally, for many of the counsellors, using technology was a very, very new concept. And in the prison isn't used to using technology in as much as perhaps it might be used in the outside world. So yes, I think that's absolutely right. Allowing it in, I think, is a good way of thinking about that. Good. Are there any other questions? Any other thoughts? If not, then maybe Mikhail, if we close the session and say thank you to everybody for joining. I hope it was useful. I hope it was of interest.
Thank you.
Please do get in touch. I think, Mikhail, you're going to leave us with a page of on the website where there's more information. Is that right?
Yeah, when just we will be leaving the webinar, we will be prompt to the page of one of the page of the ProReal website, when there are a lot of materials, videos from different applications in the health and well-being. So please see it. So when you will be leaving, you can leave your comment about the webinar over the chat as well. So
Great.
thank you very much as well.
Wonderful. Thanks to those who joined.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.